Yeah, I would like to welcome everybody to the, I think it's the 7th webinar of the research program EIWO in Exclusion, Inequality and Late Working Life about lifelong learning and skills that we have today. And we will have a presentation in the beginning, a research presentation from the EIWO team on lifelong learning towards the extended working lives agenda, with a life course approach by Nehle Penning and Rachel Crossdale. Then we have two guests and guest experts that I'm really happy to have in the program. One is Wang from the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, and we have Anna-Carin Ramsten from Vinnova, previously also here at Linköping University. As I learned for some time at Remeso, at that time when it was not ECOS, but I think ESV at the time. So welcome back in this virtual old environment. And yes, we will start with this research presentation, have time for discussion even afterwards, but hopefully save some time at the beginning for an overall discussion. First of all, between the experts and the EIWO presenters, and then between the entire group. And I'm looking forward to a nice discussion and even more to nice presentations. And hand over to Nehle and Rachel. I think Rachel, you wanted to start, or yeah, and you're sharing. Thanks a lot.
There we go. I think we're good. So hi, everybody. Thank you for having us here today. So the main focus of this first presentation is going to be the findings from our qualitative study. But before we get to that, I'll start off with a brief introduction to what lifelong learning is and how we've defined it and how it fits within the extended working lives agenda. Then a little bit of context about the broad profile of lifelong learning within the 4 countries within EIWO, so the UK, Germany, Poland and Sweden. Then I'll hand over to my colleague Nehle for more detailed information about our research and the findings that have come from that. And we'll leave you with some final thoughts for discussion. Hopefully it'll be quite interesting. So could I have the next slide, please? So for our research, we've used the Eurostat definition of lifelong learning, which states that lifelong learning encompasses all learning activities undertaken throughout life with the aim of improving knowledge, skills and competencies within personal, civic, social or employment-related perspectives. The intention or aim to learn is the critical point that distinguishes these activities from non-learning activities such as cultural or sporting activities. And we didn't include any compulsory education, so it's everything after mandated education in each of the countries. Next slide, please. So lifelong learning is intertwined with the extended working lives agenda. Increasing the provision of and accessibility of lifelong learning is central to the idea of promoting employability among older workers and keeping people being in the workforce for longer. The qualification requirements in the labour market, they've significantly increased over the past 10, 20, 30 years. And this means that older workers are less likely to hold the formal qualifications that are being asked for than younger workers. And it also means that those that do are more likely to hold out-of-date qualifications or need some kind of upskilling. And this education gap between older and younger workers, it contributes to perceptions that older workers either have less interest in learning or a kind of less of an investment when it comes to spending money on their learning. And all this can contribute to early exit from the labour market. So for an extended working lives model to be successful, it needs to support lifelong learning and have this integrated throughout, including the updating of skills throughout the workforce. And it also needs to be intertwined with the needs of the modern labour market as well. So it all feeds into each other. Next slide, please. So here we have a very brief country context from a comparative report done through the EIWO project. The comparative report, it compares the political and economic context of the 4 countries, and the full report is available on the EIWO website. So just to give you a bit of a flavour for where we're coming from in terms of lifelong learning in all of these countries, where the background to our research. So in Germany, lifelong learning's been on the policy agenda since 1990. The 2006 Qualification Opportunities Act subsidised qualifications for workers aged over 45. And then the recent Continuing Education Act reform has acts to protect time for learning during employment as opposed to having to do it supplementary. Poland is a latecomer to the extended working lives and lifelong learning agendas, transitioning to a market economy in the late 80s. Education reforms are focused on compulsory education and early education, primarily trying to strengthen the foundations of learning for everybody, as opposed to targeting older workers or later life. And the comparatively low retirement age at 60 for women and 65 for men is a barrier, as learning for older workers is seen as a poor investment for employers and government systems. Sweden, on the other hand, has a much more opportunistic attitude towards lifelong learning, with higher rates of education undertaken during paid work hours, so as part of their employment, but the take-up does remain low for older workers. And in the UK, education's weighted towards the front end of working life, and the 2017 National Retraining Scheme did include skills gap training for older workers, but provision was really uneven and distribution was really sporadic. And what's happened is that as these schemes have been kind of dialed back, voluntary organisations have stepped in to fill these gaps in provision. So all 4 countries and the EU average have seen a drop in lifelong learning participation in 2020, naturally because of the pandemic, and haven't recovered to pre-2020 levels yet. And then all 4 countries, despite differences in regime and political approach to lifelong learning, have unequal distribution of access and opportunity. So inequalities such as gender, class, ethnicity, migrant status, and employment sector are all deeply ingrained in all 4 nations to varying degrees. And then in all 4 countries, participation in lifelong learning is skewed towards the already highly educated, with those that are in poorer and less educated groups less likely to undertake education during working life, and particularly in later working life. The access to regular training and updating of skills is also more difficult for older workers than it is for younger age groups, so they have less access. And the relatively low priority given to lifelong learning in all these 4 nations highlights the need for a more comprehensive and life course focused strategy to prevent skill obsolescence and then the associated labour market problems. The next slide, please. And with that in mind, these are the questions that that framed our empirical research. So, how do older workers assess lifelong learning in the context of challenges in working life, and what are the perceived barriers and facilitators? What can be learned from individual responses to how meso-level organisational policies and macro-level social policies help or hinder lifelong learning opportunities? And I'll now pass over to Nehle for more information about our study. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, hello also from my side. I will continue now with the empirical part of this analysis, and the data to answer the research questions Rachel just mentioned comes from 100 semi-structured and problem-centered interviews with older workers, 25 interviews in the UK, in Poland, in Sweden, and in Germany. We had several inclusion criteria for our sample, like gender and qualification level. And the interview questions were around the topics current work situation, challenges and turning points in working life from career entry to present, coping strategies, and employment-related future plans. And we analyzed these interviews with the method of content analysis. I would like to mention here that the interview data is due to the topics you see, not an extensive list of all learning activities the participants take part in, but it rather illustrates learning experiences that were considered significant by the participants when asked about challenges and turning points in working life. Now I come to the results. We found lifelong learning as a topic in 87 out of the 100 interviews. And in all 4 countries, we find engagement in the right range of formal, informal, and self-regulated learning activities during working life. And we saw that job retention, progression, and career change are central sources of motivation for lifelong learning. This is a quote from the Swedish data illustrating that women aspired a career change and therefore studied again. In the EIWO program, we have the life course perspective, and in this analysis, we also wanted to have this in mind, and therefore distributed the information we found on lifelong learning mentioned by the participants to roughly to the early, mid, and late phase of working life. We know that these are not fixed lines, but it gives you a good overview of what aspects are more prevalent in which phase. And so in the more early phase and also a bit later, we find that gender norms played an important role and leading especially to disadvantages for women. We found this in 3 countries, but not in the Swedish data. This quote from our data from Germany illustrates this aspect that a woman, due to family reasons, did not continue further training as she originally planned. Then moving a bit further to the middle phase, there we see that sector differences between public and private, and also the working conditions are an important aspect, and leading to inequalities related to lifelong learning. This we could find in all 4 countries, and of course they are also play role throughout the life course, the workforce. And this quote illustrates that, or is an example for a British woman saying that she was encouraged to do further training, but she felt her workload was too high, so other stuff doesn't get done. And we see that many participants working in the private sector experienced lesser support and than participants working in the public sector. And then in the late phase of working life, we particularly also found indications for ageism and age stereotypes, and also a lack of support. This was also in all. It showed that people, although they trained themselves during working life, did not get offered a job in late working life. For example, when they experienced unemployment due to age, but also these age stereotypes that learning is more for the younger people could be seen in the data that some participants said they don't at a certain age you don't retrain or participate in training anymore. These are some examples to illustrate our findings, and then based on our data we identified barriers and facilitators, also according to the different phases in working life. And I due to time reasons I won't go into detail on every aspect here, but you can see that especially as barriers we identified in the early and mid phase challenges in reconciliation of work and family. This probably also play a role in the late phase with care of older relatives, but that we did not find in our data especially. And supporting factor is support by the employer and funding in all phases, and to encourage people to have a positive view on age. And then I come to the conclusion and discussion, and to the second research question: what can we learn from our results on the company and the macro level? So on the company level, we say that more support by the employer is needed, and the older workers felt it's a lack of appreciation, for example, if they don't get offered further training. And particularly we saw that in the private sector, and also in late working life, more support is needed for older workers. And an improvement of working conditions in certain fields, for example, in the field of private healthcare. There we had examples that due to overtime and lack of staff, people could not participate and had to use their spare time. On the macro level, we see that policies should target strategies earlier in the workforce, integrating learning into the workforce and fostering a culture of learning for all. Also that societies need to dismantle ageism and age stereotypes, as well as gender norms, so that the care work is divided more equally. And age does not play such an important role, and everyone is encouraged. Our analysis also has limitation. As I mentioned, the interviews were not focused only on lifelong learning, and the participants recall events earlier in life. So we don't have all the information, and this limits, of course, the extent. But however, we see that our results are in line with literature, and also on motivation to participate in lifelong learning, and recommendations also for to include older workers. And it adds to the qualitative research in this field. The interviews were not focused on lifelong learning, but we identified it as a very important topic. So it shows that lifelong learning is important when we talk about challenges in working life and also older workers and extending working life. And there's still need for action to reduce inequalities. To end, this is part of the EIWO program, and Rachel and I are presented it here today, but we have also some more colleagues involved in this analysis, like Indre, Benedita, and Monika Reichert, who I saw in the room. So thank you. This is
yes. Thank you, Nehle, for this presentation. Also, thank you, Rachel, of course, not to forget the first speaker. And I think there may be some questions regarding this. And besides of clapping hands on the screens, but is there any questions regarding this, or should we immediately continue with the next contributions, or maybe comments, not just questions? Yeah, two. I don't know who was first, but you decide. I have two hands.
Maybe I start because I can't see who the other person is.
Okay, sorry. Then
okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. Welcome everybody, and I'm pleased to join from London. I'm particularly interested at the moment in employment amongst what I would describe as post-retirement age people. The focus in the UK is very largely on over 50s. and I'm particularly interested in people over 65 and maybe even over 70. And I just wondered whether in your sample, you had any older people, people who were clearly already in receipt of pension, who were continuing work, looking at lifelong learning and possible continuing work.
Yes, the people were we had people aged 55 and older. So we also had people over 70 and over 65. I would need to check how many, so I don't recall it now, but we had people working and also working, but in retirement age, so receiving a pension and working. Yeah, so it was a mixed sample.
Thanks. Perhaps I can, contact or separately and discuss it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, thank you. Then we have the last hand for now for that's Bert Baldhoff. And Claudia, I don't see your picture, but you're there.
Yeah, sorry, I can't, for some reason I can't put in my video. So I've got more of a niche question. You mentioned in the presentation that career change was also a motivation. And obviously that's harder to follow through. And I wondered whether you can draw particular conclusions regarding that, because most of the funding will be done by the employer on the training, whereas for the career change, that's a much harder thing to do. So I wonder whether you had any comments on that.
Shall I, or do you want to say, Rachel, something?
Well, I can only speak for the UK sample in terms of the data, but yeah, absolutely. A lot of the career changes that we saw were either after, particularly for the women, after periods of transition, so after having time out, after having children, or after the children were grown, and then kind of taking stock and deciding what they want to do. Or we're talking, what we're talking like 30 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, when there was a lot more financing available, a lot more stipends and things like that were available to retrain or to go to university. And a lot of the UK sample that did change careers took advantage of things like that as opposed to self-financing. Nehle, did you see anything similar for the other countries?
Yes, I think the aspect you mentioned that was often after this break in working life. And regarding to the example I showed here from Sweden, there was also this person mentioned that it was possible for her due to the financial means and resources of her husband and her family. I don't know, maybe Indre, you can add something if I'm missing something here, but yeah, I think for a career change, not only of course funding and stipends are important, but also the family support and having the financial resources in the family were mentioned in relation to a career change.
Thank you very much.
I also have the question by Anna-Carin in the chat on who pays for the employee training in the different countries. This is, of course, an important issue, and I think there we find substantial differences between the countries, not just the place of the training, but also the coverage of the costs.
Yes.
And do you have something from the data, or do you, from the interview data there? Or of course, we know something from the literature. Rachel and Nehle, maybe.
I think there we come a little bit to the limitations of our data. We did not ask specifically how they financed their trainings. If I recall it correctly, we had different experiences. So people from the public sector often mentioned that was they got money from their employer. and well, as I remember it from the German data, but I cannot say it for all, and now because we don't have too little information on specifically how they financed it and how they
it's also a question for the impact of the financing. I think the structure information doesn't come from the interviews, but maybe it's an issue about who's covering the cost. But maybe that's something for later on. And I want to save some time for the experts' input because now then it's not about in Mo Wang's presentation. It's not so much about the question who's financing, but the higher education institutions' contribution to meeting the needs of for lifelong learning of older people. And I want to hand over the screen and also the floor to Mo Wang. And you have your presentation, or do we share?
Yes, thank you, Andreas. Thank you very much. Yes, I can handle my presentation. Hello, colleagues. Good afternoon to everyone. Seems like we are all in the similar time zone. It's a real pleasure to be able to join this webinar. Thanks to Andreas and to Annika for your invitation. So let me share my screen, then I can start immediately my presentation. Can you see it clearly?
Not yet.
And now?
Whoops, where am I?
Yes.
Yes, now it's there.
Okay, very good. Okay, so I will start now. My name is Mo Wang. I'm program specialist from the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning. We are based in Hamburg, Germany. And today my presentation is about a research project we conducted in the past 3 years. The title is Higher Education Institutions' Response to the Learning Needs of Aging Societies. I want to mention this project is a part of a big international research project entitled Higher Education Institutions' Engagement in Lifelong Learning. So I want to start with giving some basic information, the context of the study. As already mentioned in the first presentation, we are really in this mega trend of population aging, this unprecedented mega trend globally. So this mega trend has raised a very critical question for countries and for institutions, how they should better adjust their policies, their strategies, and their practices to addressing the needs of aging societies. And when this research is exploring the topic of older people learning is inherently related to the concept of lifelong learning, I saw the colleague also showed the definition of this concept. And of course, it has evolved over the decades, and also there are many debates. And for UNESCO, we have adhered to the humanistic version of this understanding this concept. And we promote a comprehensive understanding, and we would like to propose the following key elements about lifelong learning. First of all, it can refer to learning for a variety of purposes. It includes learning of all age groups. It includes all levels of education, including all learning modalities, and applied again to learning conducted in all learning spheres and spaces, including the formal education institutions and also non-formal and informal learning spaces. Then specifically regarding the role of higher education in implementing lifelong learning, in 1998, UNESCO, in the World Declaration on Higher Education for the 21st Century, emphasized the need for higher education systems to place students within a lifelong perspective, based on flexible entry and exit points, and with access at any age and without any discrimination. Indeed, the potential of higher education institutions in addressing the learning needs of aging societies are very big. Particularly, they are uniquely positioned to bring together the 3 core missions, teaching, research, and service to societies together, to cater for the learning needs of older adults. when the teaching and research functions are very evident to understand the critical impact of the third mission, service to society, is also highlighted in the previous literature. This service society idea is community university engagement and public service to the entire population, contrasted with the socially elite university. While the role of higher education institutions in addressing the needs of older people, addressing the lifelong learning needs, are already embedded in policy discourses for decades, but the reality of the practice still remain underdeveloped. In order for higher education institutions to engage older learners, there is a need for them to make a culture shift by integrating the older people's needs into the three missions, because these three missions are traditionally geared towards younger students. Universities at this point must acknowledge the reality of the long life. On the other side of this story, we also need to clarify what indeed the needs for older adults when referring to their engagement in higher education. The literature has identified the variety of motivations, because when we talk about older people, we are actually meaning such a heterogeneous group. So their motivations can range from cognitive interest to more utilitarian goals, for example, for higher formal qualification or for pursuing employment, or for purely social goals to make contact and interaction, for community building, for intergenerational connection. And because with the recognition they are a heterogeneous group, their barriers to engage in higher education can also vary a lot. So in the first presentation, colleagues already mentioned many of them. There can be this socio-economic constraints, can be attitudinal barriers such as ageism and stereotypes, and also other very specific barriers, factors such as a limited variety of education option, lack of recognition of prior learning, and etc. So with all this background information in mind, our study, our research aimed to explore and to investigate how higher education institutions can better cater for the needs of the older adults, the learning needs of the older adults, to address their motivation and to remove their barriers. For the study, we have selected 6 institutions from 6 countries from 5 UNESCO regions. For each of the university, we have conducted 4 to 8 interviews with the representatives of the institution, for example, the rectors or vice rectors and the program leaders. And also we listen to the voice of the learners for each of the program. And our data relying on both first-hand data, primarily getting from the interviews, and also we referred on the secondary data, the publications, reports of the university, the research literature, and also the website of the institutions. We have focused on 5 key questions in our study. The first question is we looked into the national or local policy strategy background. We explored to what extent do national or local policy strategies on population aging affect HES engagement to respond to the learning needs of older adults. We have also checked to what extent as activities to address the learning needs of aging society institutionalized within the HES. We also look into details regarding the design and the implementation of the programs in each university to investigate on the supporting mechanisms, to investigate on the enabling environment, and also we checked whether there's any holistic support provided for other learners for their future career trajectories, for their future learning demand. And for the purpose of this study, we have defined learners age 50 above as older learners. As I said, so we really did quite a comprehensive study. I didn't have the chance to share with you the findings of all cases, but I would really like to share one case very briefly, because this Elder Academy at the Education University of Hong Kong really represent an example of a very comprehensive approach of addressing the learning needs of older adults in the setting of higher education. I chose this case also because it has very interesting points regarding the topic of skills development, according to the theme of today's webinar. So first of all, regarding the national policy and institutional affinities to learning in older ages, in the interviews, we were shared the establishment of this Elder Academy in the Education University of Hong Kong can be traced back to the year of 1996. In this year, the law of the People's Republic of China on protection of the rights and interests of elderly is passed. And then the second year, the Elderly Commission is established to advise Hong Kong government on policies addressing the aging population. Then 10 years later, this Elder Academy scheme is launched by the Hong Kong government as a network across Hong Kong. At that time, this Education University of Hong Kong is still named as Hong Kong Institute of Education. In the same year, they have published the development blueprint, and for the first time, they have included the level learning perspective for their future development. Then 1 year later, the Elder Academy established in EDU Hong Kong under the Center for Lifelong Learning Research and Development. As I said, this is an example which has reflected how the higher education institutions have engaged older people's needs into the three commissions in teaching, in research, and in service to the community. More specifically, in terms of teaching, they have been running two programs. One is called the Elder Auditing Program. So it provides an opportunity to audit for older adults to audit an undergraduate general education course alongside the traditional students. Therefore, this program facilitates very much this intergenerational interaction. And there's another program called the Train the Trainer program. It's also very interesting. This program aims at the training and the professional development of tutors and coordinators of education for older adults across Hong Kong in the contexts such as older adult centers, nursing homes, or the EA scheme, other Elder Academy across Hong Kong. So these two programs focus on the age group of the third age, meaning individuals between 60 to 80. As I mentioned, this academy is located in the Lifelong Learning Research Center, so they have the chance to engage in a lot of research centered around older adults and lifelong learning. There are also several publications with the cooperation of this academy. A very interesting point is about the service to community, particularly the Train the Trainer program. They have been working together with partners, mainly NGOs, working on the ground in the community, providing service to older people, also including older people education. So through this Train the Trainer program, when the graduates, their graduates, they can send them or they can direct them to take a position in the community, working in the posts for older adults. So basically, they provide a supply of teachers in this community NGOs for them to work in the posts in the community for older adults. now we have a chance to look a bit closer to the two programs and to see how they have been contributing to address the motivations or remove the barriers. First, for the elder auditing program, basically each year they open 30 to 40 courses in arts and humanities and the social sciences to older learners to join. And this program would like to promote the participation for older adults and would like to make everything affordable. So scholarships are available through the Elder Academy Development Foundation. It's basically 6% of the tuition fee reimbursed based on 70% attendance rate. We got the chance to talk with some learners of the program. They shared with us they so much appreciated a chance to get this learning opportunity in the Education University of Hong Kong. They said that they need to go shopping when they were choosing where they can go for attending an undergraduate program. It's not easy for them to find such a chance due to the presence of quotas and the cost of the programs in many other Hong Kong universities. They expressed the wish to have one central place to find the information, and they complained a little bit the coursework, even in the Elder Academy, in the Elder Auditing program, sometimes oriented towards younger students. But they indeed have praised the accessibility of the campus, and they very much enjoyed the intergenerational communication entailed by the program. Then for this Train the Trainer program, as mentioned, this launched in partnership with this church, which has a long history, rich experience working in the community level, working for older adults. And when the learners finish the program, they can get a professional certificate. And there is such a high demand to join this program, so they have to conduct interviews to identify the candidates, very much based on their interest, the pure interest of the candidates. Also, scholarships are available. Around 75% can be reimbursed based again on the attendance rate. And this program also provides career guidance and support to direct the graduates to possible working opportunities. Again, we also listened to the voice of the learners. They told us they appreciate so much this flexible learning opportunities in the campus of the university. Is a university-based program, but they don't really have a substantial time commitment. They can balance their family duties, taking care of their older parents or the grandchildren, for example. And they also shared a very positive view of the program phase. They say this makes us feel very serious about this learning here. And they appreciate the opportunity to participate in research. They appreciate the opportunity to put the learning into practice. So I said this is the design and the implementation of the Elder Academy in the education in the Hong Kong has really reflected the needs, addressed the needs of the older people. This was very much emphasized in our conversation with the director of the Elder Academy, Professor Maureen Time. So she also mentioned this her statement back to some years ago, emphasizing the importance of following a critical approach of older people education in order to provide age-sensitive framework for later life learning. They also mentioned some challenges they are confronting, including the modest governmental funding, the importance to be more inclusive in order to reach out to traditionally underrepresented and socioeconomic groups. And particularly Professor Maureen Tam, she mentioned her wish to have the Elder Academy to be further institutionalized, not relying so heavily on the leader of the program. And she also mentioned a very interesting point. And the moment the Elder Academy is in the remit of the Labor and Welfare Bureau, and she was suggesting if this can be moved to under the remit of the Educational Bureau, then they would get better policy support. So that's the highlights of the Hong Kong case. But in the end, I would also like to share with you some findings from the other cases from the 6 case studies. We reflected on the findings, and also we have some recommendations regarding how higher education institutions can better cater for the learning needs of older adults. First of all, we have found the variability and the insufficiency of the national policy influence on older adult learning across countries. But we have noticed and we want to highlight that higher education institutions operating under national policies specifically aimed at older adult learning were more inclined to incorporate initiatives for older adults into their core institutional activities. We have also only found limited evidence of explicit inclusion of learning for older adults in the institutional core mission. But we indeed found all the interviewed institutions have adopted a wide variety of approaches and setups to address the learning needs of older adults. We noticed and want to highlight the importance of the well-coordinated management or cooperation, including a dedicated office, manages and coordinates learning opportunities for older adults, facilitating their participation, and they can be mainstreamed in university activities. We notice that the importance, the significance of the support from senior institutional and program leaders, as well as management engagement with external stakeholders and the wider community. They are really crucial for ensuring program continuity and diversity. And across all the 6 cases, they have all demonstrated the significant potential and substantial benefits in addressing the learning needs through the 3 missions of higher education. And also, more specifically regarding the design and the implementation of the learning programs, we want to echo very much the importance of building the initiatives, the programs grounded in social and educational gerontology, including the critical educational gerontology. For our initiatives firmly grounded in the educational gerontology, evident in both the curriculum and our organization, they really demonstrate the advantages of addressing, first of all, clarifying the needs of the older adults and accordingly addressing their needs in a proper way. And there are also very many targeted measures by the institutions to address the barriers to older adults' engagement in higher education, prominently 3 themes. First is promote positive conceptions of older age. Secondly, to be really inclusive, to foster socio-economic diversity among older adults in higher education. And thirdly, ensuring diversity and flexibility in education offering and break the structural barriers. By reflecting on the findings and look into the future, we have proposed 3 points to conclude our study. I would also want to share these 3 points also to conclude my presentation today. So the first point is we think it's very important to notice the evolving landscape of aging societies. Amidst the ongoing debates about retirement and older age definitions. So just now our scholars was asking, for example, should we focus on 50 above or 60 above? So it's really, the definition will evolve. So we can foresee that, older individuals, they are facing and they will face more diverse educational choices driven by personal, educational, and work-related needs. So their needs will be even more diverse. In this point, we echo very much Giddens in his book in 1998. And then, therefore, we would propose lifelong learning for older adults needs to center on empowering them to reflect on their roles as agents of change, emphasizing their needs and their social positions. Then more specifically for higher education institutions, they must adopt a reflexive approach, considering the relevance of educational content, effectiveness of instructional strategies, and the social political context influencing later life learning in order to empower older learners and to prepare them for their future. Thank you. So that's all for my presentation. I very much look forward to your questions and comments.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the great presentation. And I really like the change of perspective also to see that lifelong learning is also not just on focusing on one phase, and also we changed also the arena from more employer focused lifelong learning to higher education institution learning, and I think it shows exactly this continuum. And so far there in our presentation there's a little bit break, but I think we have to overcome this. But before talking too much, is there any comments from the audience? Because otherwise we are running a little bit out of time. So please be precise, and then yeah.
Hi, thank you so much, Mo. That was really interesting. I just was curious, all the universities or higher education institutions that you surveyed, were there any sort of recurring points that came through all of them that made it more that made these sort of programs aimed at older adults more successful? And maybe those recurring points, do you think that they could be replicated somewhere like the UK as well?
Yes, thank you so much. And I think there are multiple factors at the different levels, at the policy level, as also as the institutional level, as I mentioned. First of all, through our study, our general study regarding higher education institutions' engagement in lifelong learning, basically we have found already, in order for higher education institutions to engage in the non-traditional students, including older adults, a very positive policy context is always supportive, helpful. Meaning that if there is a national policy in place for higher education institutions to encourage them to pursue a mission or a vision to be a lifelong learning institution, then it's always easy, or most likely the institutions can adopt very systematic approach to engage in non-traditional learners, including the older adults. Then at the institutional level, then it's very important for the institutions, they have institutionalized this agenda, this idea into their structure. They have dedicated unit, they have well-coordinated mechanism, and also it will be very important for them to follow the educational gerontology perspective, meaning they need to get clear about the needs, or to understand the needs of the older adults. They cannot assume they are the same group as the traditional students' younger group. And of course, if the programs are set up, implemented for employment-oriented purpose, we always found it's very helpful if there are some supporting mechanism to bridge the learning opportunity with the labor market, to provide career guidance or to direct them to possible employment opportunities. Our research will be soon published with Springer, and I invite you to read it in details, and you will find more details there. Thank you. I see another hand.
Yeah, Nehle. Nehle,
Yeah.
can I ask you for a precise
Yes.
short question, because I want to avoid wasting, no, not wasting, but avoiding too much, using too much time in the middle and not using it, having it in the end for a discussion of all three contributions together.
Yes, it's also more a comment than a question. Just very briefly, I would like to strengthen this aspect you mentioned, also to include different socioeconomic groups, because in our interviews we also saw that especially the people with a interrupted working life and low pension don't aim for so much higher education and retirement, and the ones with a stable working life and higher education, high pension, really looked forward to do some university courses in retirement. So I just wanted to say that I think it's a very important aspect to reduce inequalities there.
Thank you. I fully echo your point. Thank you very much.
Thanks. I think we have quite a nice story also from work to higher education to between life phases, and now we also shift to policy activities. And we had a European, a global perspective, and I don't know how Swedish you want to be, Anna-Carin, or how European you will be. But I'm curious to hear what happens. So yeah, hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Anna-Carin Ramsten, and I work at Vinnova as a senior advisor in higher education, research and innovation. I've also worked at the government office, and before that at Linköping University together with Indre many years ago. Well, today I will pick up some, 5 slightly different policy activities that I think is relevant for today's subject. And the first one is the Government Strategic Partnership Program on Lifelong Learning. It was a program that started in 2019, and it was the former Swedish government that launched it. And the program brought together over 250 participants, and they represented business, academia, civil society, and the public sector at both municipal but also regional and national level. And the goal within these programs was to identify innovative solutions to our major challenges and to increase Sweden's competitiveness. The program made an agenda and a number of recommendations on how to overcome these challenges relating to ensuring that the supply of skills and access to lifelong learning opportunities is responsive to labor market needs. So this program was organized in 10 working groups with different thematic areas. As a result, Vinnova financed different projects that were on the more with a systemic perspective. And those were, for example, like micro-credentials. It's about international talents, but it was also a platform for courses from higher education institutions, where you can have this overview. What do the universities have as courses for lifelong learning? And the agenda is available on Vinnova's website if you want to look at it closer, but it's in Swedish. Yeah, but there is Google Translate. Number 2, cooperation between national authorities on skills and lifelong learning. Last year, the Swedish government tasked 7 authorities to work together to improve the governance of the Sweden skill system across relevant sectors and levels of government. The national authorities are the Swedish Public Employment Service, the Swedish National Agency for Education, Skolverket, the Swedish Higher Education Authority, Universitetskanslerämbetet, and the Swedish Council for Higher Education, UHR, the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth, Tillväxtverket, the Swedish National Agency for Higher Vocational Education, Myndigheten för yrkeshögskolan. And the Swedish National Agency for Higher Vocational Education was made responsible for this government assignment. And the collaboration between all these, authorities takes place in working groups. And we have working group like analysis and forecast, validation, learning centers, and entrepreneurships. One group is working with the challenges in northern Sweden, and that's also a government assignment to the Swedish Public Employment Agency, alltså Arbetsförmedlingen, and the Swedish Agency for Economic and Regional Growth, Tillväxtverket, to address the specific challenges for employers in northern Sweden. And this cooperation between these 7 authorities has also started that they applied for a technical support instrument. So last year, this group of authorities applied or requested support from the European Commission for a technical support instrument. And that work just started this summer. And the problem that these authorities have identified is a lack of effective coordination and cooperation mechanisms. And that has adverse effects on the strategies to aim to reduce skills mismatch and shortages. So therefore, strengthening the governance of Sweden's skill system is vital to reduce this skills mismatch and shortage. And this work is running now, and it will end December next year, and then there will be a road map, and there will be also recommendations for the governance of the Swedish skill system. So we hope very much for this project to also get these authorities to work together with the government, because that's the government is organized in different offices, and that makes it somewhat challenging. Another thing I would like to mention that is important to understand or to recognize is the transition study support, omställningsstudiestödet. This reform was launched last year, and this transition study support is a reform that makes it possible to study either for training or for changing profession. The reform is part of the collective agreement, alltså kollektivavtalet. And it's between employers and the unions. And the aim is that you as an individual should be more attractive on the labor market. The reform was based on the needs for personnel in industry and public sector. So it was both blue-collar labor, but also teachers, nurses, and that sort of working groups. The reform has challenges, as the search pressure has been much greater than expected. And the figures shows that the highly educated and women, they are the one who mainly apply for this support. And then I would also like to mention another government assignment that we got this spring, and it's about advanced digitalization. And advanced digitalization is an industry-driven program that exists to promote and accelerate Sweden's industry ability to create digital solutions for the future. It's a joint initiative by ABB, Ericsson, Saab, the Business Federation, and Vinnova. And Vinnova's role in this is to finance R&D projects, but also other projects. It's huge investment and from the government. So this is this is what the government has said should be our main priority some years ahead. And in this, the industry has they are the one who's in the driving seat in this program, and they see the lack of competence, but also, as you say, they have elderly working, and they see many of them want to quit or do other things. So they have seen that how could they keep the workforce as long as possible and be an attractive employer. And in this case, we have also started, or not we, it's the industry, has started an expert learning lab. And that's for developing new ways of training activities. So in order to retain these experts, often elderly persons over 50, I would say, in the industry, we need new ways of working that put skills to work faster, and it's the industry needs in focus. So this is a collaboration between Ericsson, Saab, Volvo, and ABB, together with Chalmers, Örebro, Linköping University, and the Royal Institute of Technology. And this expert learning lab is it started this spring, and it's really working. So I think in the beginning of next year, I think there will be some results, and I think this could be very interesting for a lot of people to follow. And together with this expert learning lab, we have also put a lot of money, I would say, in a policy lab for advanced digitalization education. And this is for higher education. And we can see that is a lot of policy obstacle. And when it's about lifelong courses, higher education, and towards especially toward all when it's about to the people who's working. And the project aims to explore and also benefits to policy changes in this about skills and lifelong learning. And the work will be done in collaboration with industry stakeholders and government entities. And this is, we can see that in this discussion about lifelong learning and how to go about, especially in the higher education, we need also the government to get on board in these questions. So this is a collaboration between Chalmers, Örebro, Linköping University, and the Royal Institute of Technology. Yes, I think that's some I would that I would like to present. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this presentation. I really enjoyed this perspective on it, which added to the picture that we had before. And I think there's certainly a high interest in this discussion first to this presentation, but then again, I think it would be good also to then take a more holistic perspective. Is a little bit too broad, but at least a broader perspective on all three inputs and looking at it from an integrated perspective. So please. Yeah, Mo.
Thank you for this excellent presentation. Very interesting, all the initiatives you mentioned. I would like to ask a question. I don't know, you could answer for all the three, but at least for one or two. How do you reach out to the learners to identify them as participants for the different learning programs? And also, what is the role of learners in designing and implementing the programs? You were mentioning industries are in the driving seat for the programs, but I just wonder, the learners are kind of forced to join the learning opportunity, or they actually have the autonomy to decide whether they want to be part of it and whether their wish can be reflected in the learning program, in the designing and implementation. Thank you.
Well, it's not about forcing someone. I think this is what they have seen is that you can't separate learning and training from, it's not something else from what you do in your daily work. So I think that's what this expert learning lab has the spot on, that learning and training is a part of what you do every day. It's not something else, because then you get relevance. And also these are people that are highly skilled, and they have driving forces in their work. And they know so they don't, if the training isn't relevant, they won't go there. They won't participate. Mm-hmm. And they have, said that if it's going to be relevant, it must be in the core what I do every day. And it must be a part of what I do every day. It's not something I can go away and do for 3 days and then come back. I think that's the view of learning and training as a part of what you do every day. I think that's what's unique. And I think we know that it's hard to get people get through the courses. They started and then they have other things to do, so they don't complete it. But in this case, they complete it because it's right on the spot what they do every day.
Thank you. So the participation is voluntary. It's not compulsory. They can decide to go or not to go.
I think they apply internally if they want to, because they have sections of like what do you say, like I think they apply, yeah. But if you don't apply, you don't have work, It's
What would be the alternative model if it's not voluntary? What is the alternative?
Well, I think that you see that the competition within industry is so hard today. So these people, the experts, they know well to be ahead and to be in the front of new services or new products and so on. They must be in the forefront, and they know what they need. So this is so, and how they want to be, and how they should work, because I think that's the point here, that since it's a part of what you do every day, I think for all humans, I think that's very relevant. I don't think any of us would go to a course that we don't feel that we understand why we're doing it, So relevance, I think it's very important in this case.
Maybe a question from my side to the EIWO colleagues. How do you see the aspect of relevance in the data in what in other people's perspectives? What is the relevance of relevance, maybe? So if for this for the evaluation or for the description of participation or non-participation in learning activities then?
Certainly for in-work learning, so job-based learning, it's massively important. One of the things that came out in the data, particularly in not the high-skilled group, so the skilled and the low-skilled group, was that with the day-to-day learning that they were asked to do sort of on the job, kind of the things that we all do, you know, the quick 10-15 minute courses, half an hour 40-minute courses that we have to do from HR, they were just not interested in those whatsoever, because it was things like social media training and learning new forms of technology that may not be the ones that they're working with every single day. And one aspect that kind of stood out was that it wasn't just the relevance for their job, but it was the relevance of the skills for their lives as well. So they were saying, oh, I don't use social media in my life, so I don't need to use it at work. I have no interest in learning that. Whereas they were saying that other people maybe use these different things, or use these different platforms, or these particular digital skills, use these digital skills in their lives, so the training would be more kind of wholly relevant as opposed to job specific. And that was leading to not necessarily a lack of participation, because they had to do these training courses for job retention, but certainly a disengagement with more general kind of learning.
Does this mean that the experience of relevance already needs learning or training, or because you described it for the experts that there is a pressure to participate in this? Does this mean that it needs kind of a more either a normative construction of lifelong learning, or of learning over the life course, or is it more that that you need a certain level of education or level of learning participation to accept the relevance of this activity?
I don't think so. I think I have a very good example. It's from a paper mill outside Norrköping, where you have operators, and they were going to work with reduction of energy in the production. And then they were asked, and then they said that, well, if we could look at all the data that we're collecting by the computers, and how could we do the analysis and see? Then they said, okay, then we understand, because then they took the data, and together with other people, they looked at the data together with other people, and then they saw a lot of things in this data, but they needed their background, they needed their experience and the knowledge of the production to understand, because if you had put this data to someone else who didn't have the production knowledge, it wouldn't say anything. But for them, they could understand, aha, here we can see, here we can do some things, and we can reduce the energy. So I think then they saw the relevance of this course or the training. So I think I don't think it hasn't to do with a level of education. I think it's about we are humans.
May I jump in, Andrea?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think what you just mentioned is really clearly an example of a participatory process.
Yes.
So when the learners have a chance to understand and to feel and to give their voice regarding what they are going to learn, and they have a better motivation.
Yeah.
If it's purely driven by the industry, by the employer, even though they are told this is the trend and this is the most important things you need to learn, they would still keep their skeptical attitude. So I just want to say that it is a very good example of the importance of involving learners in the designing and implementation process of the program. And I also want to comment on this relevance of content. I think it's an evolving process, the needs, the demand. I also want to give an example of the digital skills training. So back 2 years, for all the courses targeted at older people, the training is really about how to use computers, how to use Windows, for example, Windows system. But nowadays, the digital skills training are basically more about how to use smartphones. And we can foresee in the next maybe 2 or 3 years, the training will become about how to use ChatGPT, for example. So it's really an evolving process, and the programs have to be designed according to this evolving context of the skills demand of the society.
But I think also that in Sweden we have a system with different forms of education and training, and I think that you have to search what sort of education or training is suitable for this industry or this group of people. So I think that's also not everyone is for higher education. We also have higher vocational education, we have folkhögskolor, we have different forms of educational forms that could take up different needs that we have. And I think that's very nice with Sweden, that we have these different forms of educational systems that you can go to and take a course, shorter and longer.
I have two comments, basically two comments in the chat. One is from Alex Murdoch, who invites for context. I think this is important that we continue this discussion over this event itself. So please take this as an invitation. And we have a critical comment by Maria, who insists of being careful with our wording here and puts on an issue of overgeneralizing the elderly, which I think is a good comment in a way. I think nevertheless, did we do this today in an extreme way? Okay, then explain it.
No, it's just quite upsetting when in the scientific meeting of this quality, I can hear elderly, and then elderly over 50 plus on the constant base. I really think that we are the scientific society that first should use and then promote the initiatives from WHO and other international organizations, and not to do vice versa. Thank you.
Okay, nevertheless, we also try to differentiate, and we had a discussion about the question about the 70 plus population versus those in late working life, and the 55 pluses that we had in the EIWO study. So I would not say that we are at the forefront of age discrimination here, but this maybe was just my impression. But never.
No, we are definitely not at the forefront, but I want us to be on the forefront from the other end. Not just to be non-ageist, but to promote non-ageist way to other stakeholders.
Okay. Did I miss any other comments on this, or should we continue the discussion then in the background afterwards, which I very much hope will be the case, no matter if you have more comments or not? Because for me, this was really an inspiring starting point, also against the backdrop of what we do around lifelong learning and the participation in work, but also also more. We had a discussion, I think, 10 days ago, which of course extended it to the discussion beyond work, or not necessarily after work, but independent from work. So learning as a process which is not related to gainful employment, and which I think is a very helpful perspective. And of course, the perspective on policies needs to be extended. And I would be happy if you can elaborate on this.
But I also think that you have to be aware of that a lot of people, we are the demographic challenges. So a lot of people have to work, have to have quite long working lives today. So I think that's why, you know, where to put an age or 50 or 70, I think that's not very relevant, because we know that the working life will be quite long for many of us and also for our children. So I think in this case, I think you have to have a more system perspective and look at it as a whole. About lifelong learning, it's a way of looking as to learning, education, and training as something you do up and down, in and out during life.
That's exactly our starting point. I mean,
Yes.
in EIWO, where we have the idea of this prolonged working life and the need for lifelong learning.
Yes.
What I just learned in this, and this was my access to the topic. What I learned also in the discussion that we have here, that this lifelong learning idea, or this lifelong learning perspective doesn't stop at where paid work stops.
No.
And I think it's also an issue of the development of culture of lifelong learning, which is then also related to the prolonged or need for prolonged work or prolonged labor market activity, but that it needs to continue afterwards also for successful retirement and for a life that is not connected to a situation where we sell our labor on the market. And that also these big institutions like higher education institutions, but also other actors need to be involved in this process. And that higher education, for example, is not just something for the labor market, but it's something for the quality of society and also for the inclusiveness of societies, which is at least the point of development. And then back into age, even for us, I think this is important. But we need to take into account that, of course, these life course patterns change, as you said. But aging is basically, at least for us that initiated the webinar, the home ground, and lifelong learning and work is more the specific perspective on it so far. And so this is where we meet. And that's why I think it's helpful.
Yeah.
Was this yes the final comment?
maybe.
Okay, then I would like to thank everybody for this nice webinar, for the 3 excellent inputs, and for the interesting discussion, and also for listening and for inviting for future contacts. I'm happy if we can serve as an arena where we establish new contacts, and yeah, let's see how this continues. I think we will work on this in the next years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.